Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. My Great Britain this week is an environmental campaigner known as the Coastline Runner. Luke Douglas-Home's ongoing campaign is to run around the coastline of the UK collecting plastic rubbish as he goes, and so highlighting how much goes into the sea every year. Also the founder of Clear Public Space, who want to create a future without rubbish. He long ago decided to stop just talking about pollution and to get up and do something about it. Luke joins me now. Good evening, Luke. It's quite a challenge running coastline. I happen to know that it's, 11, 12,000 miles, depending on how fiddly you make the measurement. How much have you covered and how much to go?
What we're doing is separating into different chapters, each chapter being a local authority. And I've done 3 local authorities so far, and that's Norfolk, Lincolnshire and East Riding, and the next will be Yorkshire. And that is really how we're doing it, because then we advise the county and borough and parish councils on how to reduce the shoreline plastic that we uncover.
How much plastic is going into the sea? I mean, I've been watching this story for a long time, and then of course COVID happened, and suddenly it was plasticised masks and all the rest of it that was suddenly there in the sea as well. How much waste goes into the water?
I could harass you with terrible figures, but millions and millions of tonnes per year. Not just goes into our environment, but specifically into the oceans.
How does it make its way? If someone drops something on the street or plastic goes into a bin, how does it find its way into the ocean?
Well, what I've uncovered or observed as we've been running is that the amount of unnecessary littering is mind-blowing. And that's from cigarette butts to things like this, of a dog waste bag. People go through the effort of collecting the dog waste into their bag, and then when no one's looking, they just chuck it behind the sand dunes. And this is a behaviour that A, is unacceptable, but B, can be so easily changed and reduced. And that's why we're speaking with councils and the Crown Estate about how to prevent this from happening.
Are we getting worse? Are we dumping more plastic and more waste into the sea, or less as the years go on?
All the figures, all the data show that in the next 30 years it's going to double, in fact. And so the trajectory is not good. And so people will say, oh, you're blowing against the wind, etc., etc. But I believe that if one small change can grow and grow and grow, so people become aware that this is a problem that they can do something about. And earlier you were talking and questioning about about the climate so-called emergency that we're in, but this is something that individually all of us can do something about. Stop the plasticization of our oceans.
It means that we're ingesting plastic, doesn't it, ultimately?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's the horror. So even if you don't contemplate the harm that you're doing to sea animals and biodiversity, and the farmers, let's say in Norfolk, eating plastic and getting full and starving. Even if you're not worrying about that, you might consider and then begin worrying that microplastics are now in our blood. And so the Centre of International Law say that plastics from their extraction, from their use and their disposal pose a risk to health. And not just our health, but every life form on the planet. And so if everyone was aware of that, if you have the time and ability, wouldn't you want to do something about that?
Emily, this is an issue really we could and should all get behind. I think about the dog waste argument. I think about all the time people putting waste in bags and then throwing the bags into the bushes.
Nice. It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because we hear our politicians and we hear young people and activists and so on in schools all talking about climate change, essentially the things that they don't have the power to really change. Whereas these small things everyone can do. Don't leave your dog litter on the floor in a plastic bag. Don't throw a water bottle just down on the street. Don't put cigarette butts everywhere. That's the little changes that actually we have the control to do.
Benjamin, I watched the Glastonbury coverage, and I know that that hellscape that was left behind, and I know that machinery moves in to collect all of that. However, what kind of attitude is that about the people who attended Glastonbury, who walked away from that kind of mess, leaving it in their wake for somebody else to tidy.
Yeah, it's not just Glastonbury either. After every Extinction Rebellion protest, you find they leave, they do these huge things. They all get together in Trafalgar Square or whatever, or try and block traffic. They leave behind all this waste, this plastic waste, packaging, you know, because they have a little picnic. And they leave all their rubbish behind. So the hypocrisy is what gets me. People always bang on about the environment and wanting to save it. But when it comes down to the things that they actually, as Emily said, that they actually can do themselves, they don't do it.
Signs of hope, Luke?
Yes.
Leave us on a high note.
Signs of hope are all the local councils and mayors that I've met along the way have all got really, really strong ideas about improving it. And signs of hope, let's say, this would be an unusual thing for you, Neil. The signs of hope come from Skegness. How about that? Skegness.
I love Skegness.
Skegness, the local aquarium, gives free admission to people who have cleaned up plastic from the beach. Now, that is precisely how the behaviour changes. People see the benefit, direct benefit of not just chucking and disposing it. And all the mayors and all the councils just say, pack it in, stop chucking it, please. Leave just your footprints.
Luke, someone taking the time and actually getting... I would take that. Taking the time to get up on their hind legs and do something practical about an issue that touches all of our lives. It's definitely puts you in the category of a Great Britain for this week. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for your time and best of luck with the rest of the 11,000, 12,000 miles that you have to cover.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you. It's just gone 7 o'clock.